For people who might not say, immediately reach for Romans 8:28 in their minds, would you mind reciting it for me and giving me a sense of what the popular understanding of that is?
It's funny, I was talking to a group of pastors here in Oxford a month or two ago, and they asked me what I'd been working on, and this came up, and I said, you all know Romans 8:28.
Yes, as we do.
And they recited it.
Oh, they did?
Yeah. So, all things work together for good to those who love God. And I said, well, okay, I'm sorry, but actually what the Greek says is not all things work together for good for those who love God. It's that God works all things for good with those who love him. And the phrase those who love him refers back to the previous verse, where the people in question are the people who are caught up strangely against their own will, perhaps, in the extraordinary dialogue between the Father and the Spirit. And that then goes back to Romans 5:5, which says that God pours out his love in our hearts through the Spirit who's been given to us, so that there is this bizarre dialogue between the Father and the Spirit, and we're caught in the middle, and the place where we are caught is the Christ-shaped place, the place of saying, my God, why did you abandon me? And that's why he says in the next verse that we might be conformed to the image of his Son, that he might be the firstborn among many siblings. But so it's God works all things with those who love him. And we've resisted that with because we're frightened of anything that looks as if we are adding to our own salvation. This is not about salvation, it's about vocation.
Yeah.
It's about who we are called to be in the present. We are called to be people who allow that agonized prayer to happen. And it happens either when something bad's happened to us, or when something bad's happened to people that we love, or people that we know about, or people that we see on the news, whatever, and we simply have to hold on to it with the lament in the presence of God. And what Paul is saying is, God is working with us because the Spirit is at work within us. So it's a trinitarian theology, both of suffering and of intercession, and then of ultimate purpose, which currently we don't see where that's going.
That is a radically different reading than the cross stitch on a pillow.
It is, absolutely. And the cross stitch on a pillow is basically a form of Stoicism, because all things work together, so that, there is this sort of inner force.
All things work together will be, here I am with what I think is the disorderedness of my life. But actually this whole time, it's been a divine conspiracy. Right. And actually, if I look through all of the pieces, I will fit them together. And in my faithfulness, then I will know that good or bad, God was leading me here and I should eat it. That's usually where I land on it.
That's right.
And certain traditions, I'm just thinking of certain Christian traditions, have, especially when they have a very intimate sense of God acting in small ways, and then you look for signs and little signs everywhere. And yes.
Yeah.
God's activity everywhere, bubble. But the feeling that, and especially when you're in pain, the desire to look around for each small sign as the action of God's intervention and God's love. I find that the thing that's most confusing is the thing that feels like it should feel most like love. God, just show up now, please. Now would be great. Does become very confusing when somebody else comes alongside and says, all these little signs. Each, as you describe, each like a little jigsaw. And then Gary from Indiana, I'm going to show you how to look above. Like faith is actually just the drone footage. Of whatever your life is supposed to be.
That's a good phrase. Yes. God moves in mysterious ways, and many of us have believed things in the past which we now look back and see that was actually quite misleading. But again, I do want to say God can use even muddled and misguided thinking to help and sustain us in dark times. I remember there's a thing in the story of John Bunyan when, at a certain point in his life, he realized that his faith had been being sustained by a particular text which he'd read, and then he discovered it was in the Apocrypha. It wasn't in the Bible at all, and he felt, oh dear, should I have allowed that to happen? I want to say, just lighten up. God can use a text from Shakespeare or whatever, although actually, of course, I think it is I think people confuse Romans 8:28 with that text from Shakespeare which says, there's a divinity which shapes our ends, rough hew them how we will, which is that kind of, it's all going to work out, that's okay. And there's part of me that still wants to say, it will work out. You know, God is good, God is sovereign, but the danger then is that we imagine God being sovereign. He's the big CEO upstairs. Everything's going to be all right. And then we kind of fit Jesus into that picture. No, that's not the way to do Christian theology. The way to do Christian theology is have Jesus in the middle, Jesus in Gethsemane in the middle, Jesus saying, now is my soul troubled in the middle, and somehow rethink God around that.
Yes.